Hello, this is Sam Simon, also known as Dementia Man, with my video blog for the week of July 1st. My topic today, as my granddaughter might have defined it, as Dementia Man going deep. July 1st now is important to me for a number of reasons, but let me start with the whole idea of an existential journey. What does that mean? And why is today an existential moment? A couple of reasons. I'm going to talk about this in a little bit circular way. First, perhaps and foremost, it is my son, Marcus, or our son, 54th birthday. That meant he was born in 1970, July 1st, 1970. What more existential moment is there in life than the birth of a child? Now, way back, actually, in 1970, I wasn't in the room when that happened. I wouldn't normally be in the room anyway, because back then, husbands were still pacing the floor outside a birthing room or an operating room. In this instance, my wife was going to have and was having a C-section. We were in Austin, Texas. Her delivery was delayed because she needed a C-section. So back then, I didn't hear the cry of a baby. I was actually very nervous. This was our first child. And yes, I got to hold him. It was very existential, but different than something that happened many, many years later, the birth of a grandchild. And it was probably 16 years ago. And my wife and I, Susan, were privileged to be standing just outside the birthing room. And it was the first time ever we heard a new baby cry. Talk about existential. Today, though, there is another existential moment. It's one that's very sad to me and very important to me. So today, July 1st, 2024, a dear, dear friend by the name of Lynn Fielder has passed away. Lynn and I met probably 30 years ago, maybe 40 years ago. We were both on the board of directors of the World Institute on Disability. I'd been on for a few years, and Lynn joined. She had been previously working in Silicon Valley. She was the clinical director for Planned Parenthood in Silicon Valley. Quite an important job. But Lynn also had Parkinson's disease. Even at 30 years old, Lynn had undergone some brain stimulation work. She had been doing well, but was required or needed to resign her post because she wasn't going to be able to continue to work in 1970. She was in her 40s. So that wasn't 1970. I'm sorry, that was when my son was born. She's in her mid 60s today as she passed on. I learned so much from Lynn. And, there can be existential relationships. If you know me, you know that I've had several. My wife, Susan, who knows Lynn, and Lynn has made some jewelry for us in the past, and Susan proudly wears an original Lynn Fielder. And of course, if you've followed my podcasts and my blogs over the years, you know that Susan herself faced a terminal diagnosis in around 2000 and is an unlikely survivor of breast cancer. And we went through an existential journey. Her determination to recover and to live a meaningful life with the disease, hopefully in the past. I wrote a play about that called The Actual Dance, and even have written a book called The Actual Dance and Existential Love's Ultimate Journey. Didn't call it existential then. So with my own diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease, I had to come to terms with what do I do now and how do I deal with it. My friend Lynn had a lot to do with that. See, when I originally met Lynn, and the first day I ever met Lynn, we had lunch. She invited me to lunch for some reason. And she told me that she had come to understand herself, Lynn Fielder, not poor Lynn Fielder with a terrible disease, Parkinson's, but Lynn Fielder with Parkinson's. That was who she was and was going to be, and she has been the best of that in her entire life. And indeed, this was about the time Susan was going through her breast cancer. And she told me, sitting right across from me, I can still remember it today. So this had to be 2001, 2002. Sam, you are the best Sam Simon with a wife who has breast cancer as the world has ever seen, not poor Sam whose wife has breast cancer. That is actually a very significant understanding, and it can be hard to embody. And it is, I think, another definition of existentialism. Who are we? And we are an embodiment of who we are with what we have. And our job in life is to make the best of that we can. And now, with my own diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease, 2021, I understand my journey. It took a minute. It took a minute to be the best Sam Simon with Alzheimer's disease that the world has ever seen. Part of that journey, part of the materialization of that, or manifestation of that, is this play, these podcasts. I attribute almost all that to the deep lesson that Lynn was able to teach me. Now, there were a lot of elements. It took a little while as Lynn and my relationship and friendship developed. One of the most important things she gifted me with was how to walk a labyrinth. And the ability to use a labyrinth is a form of existentialism. It lets us get out of our head if we can walk those circles and let go of everything but a sense of beingness in the world and in life. Get to that center point and breathe and be who we really are. Then we too can find greater depth and meaning in our lives. One time, Lynn and I had been in San Francisco, both on the board of directors of the World Institute on Disability. And the meeting was over. We were both staying in the same hotel. And in Lynn's way, and only Lynn has this way, was let's go up to Nob Hill, Grace Church, and walk the labyrinth outside. They have an outside and an inside labyrinth. And just because it was 11:30 at night wasn't a reason not to go do that. So what was I going to say? Okay, Lynn, let's go do that. Now you should need to know that Lynn could barely walk forward at this time. And she was very hard to understand in her speech. But together around midnight on a Friday night, Lynn and I walked up to Nob Hill from our hotel that we were staying in and walked down outside to the Labyrinth and Grace Church. Of course, I walked first and arrived to that center first. And I thought I did it slowly, and I listened and I breathed. Lynn had to move around in the dancing formation, her hands above her head, as if she had music in her ears, because she couldn't walk straight forward. Her feet wouldn't listen to what the brain were telling them to do, but she could somehow magically prance and dance and move forward. And she stood in the center. And for both of us, it was an extraordinary moment of beingness, of existentialism, of who we are in this extraordinary thing called life. And so today, I celebrate my son, I mourn Lynn, and I try to be the best Sam Simon with Alzheimer's disease the world has ever known. And I will continue for my own sake, for my children's sake, and for Lynn's sake to keep doing that. So as your life moves along and changes and adapts, be the best of who you are the world has ever seen, and dance our way through life to understand that we are living it to our best ability and to receive and give the gifts that we have in our beingness. So that's my beginning of the second half of 2024. In 18 days, I'm going to become into my 80th year. I won't turn 80, I'll turn 79. And I'll keep, for my own sake and for the memory of Lynn, being the best Sam Simon with Alzheimer's disease that the world has ever seen.